Yo, what's up? Mike Cimrelli here. I've gotten a little lazy with videos. I apologize. I'm even holding the camera. My foot's slipping underneath. I'm not using a tripod, not wearing any nice clothes, whatever. The point is, in this video, I'm going to be talking about something really neat that I did to my 7.3 Power Stroke. If you guys are not truck people, share this with someone who is, or check it out because this is kind of something that's interesting to me, and I'd love to share my adventure with you guys. So in a nutshell, there's a whole bunch of moving parts in the engine, obviously. And I did a whole bunch of modifications to the truck at once, which in some ways is great, in some ways is not, because if you have an issue, you don't know exactly where to start tracing it. Now, I spent a considerable amount of time talking to different mechanics and different people that build diesels, and none of them could answer my question properly. And the question was, when I dump the throttle, it feels like the fuel is cutting out. Like it'll spool up, tons of boost, and all of a sudden it just feels like it's dead. And what it feels like is happening is like the pickup tubes in the sending unit are clogged, or the fuel pressure is dropping because I'm dumping it too hard. Anyway, I chased all those things down to the nth power. I replaced a bunch of sensors, the ICP, the IPR. I cleaned everything out. I checked the pressure on the HPOP. And I bought a scan tool. I mean, I went buck wild on this thing. It turns out that it's just the map sensor reading there's too much boost. And so it's cutting the fuel out. And so in order to fix that, you need to get what's called a boost fooler, which I'm going to go over in this video. And basically what that does is the turbocharger's here and it's spooling up, and say it's at 50 psi and your truck only wants 20. Well, as soon as the truck reads 21 and up, it's going to go up too much and it's going to cut the fuel. Well, there goes your boost and your power. So what you do is you put a regulator in between the boost and the sensor. And what that does is this is 40, and then it chokes it down to 20 or whatever it needs to be, and this reads 20. And so I'm going to show you the full force diesel one that I bought. I'm also going to show you one that I made for like less than 20 bucks at Harbor Freight. And I'm going to compare the two of those, and you guys can decide for yourself what route you want to go. So this is my 97 7.3 engine. It's got an awesome turbo here, built by Kent Barnes at Turbocharger Services. I've also got full force injectors hiding underneath there. The point of this video is the boost. So the turbo makes enough boost to where this sucker starts cutting out. And that's because this sensor right back here, the map sensor, it reads a certain PSI. I think it's 22 or 23. And then it starts throwing off a code. And so the way I chose to get around that is you've got this hose that's going from the bottom of the spider and it goes up to the map sensor, right? So what I did was I put a Harbor Freight regulator in between there, and then what I did was I attached this guy. What I meant to say here was I set the compressor to shoot how much pressure I wanted the turbo at. So I would be pumping in, say, 35 or 40 psi, and then I'd change the regulator down to 22 psi. To the other end over here, and I attached this to the map sensor, and I put about 40 pounds of pressure in there, and I regulated this down to 20. So this valve is great and all. You can see my Gorilla Tape. This is how I stopped it from coming unadjusted while I'm driving. That is just really not what I want under my hood. It did make a massive improvement. I mean, like massive. Before, I would jump on it in like a daily driver tune, and it would spool up and then just kill the fuel. And so that's why you need something like this if your engine is set to stop boosting or stop fueling at 23 psi, and say you want to have 35. And also it's important to have a wastegate, which I do not have, to regulate that psi to a certain amount. Like say you want to do 35 psi on there, you need to have the actuator set to that, and then you need to have this guy basically choking down the boost reading to the map sensor. And then you can have full fuel and you won't have any issues with codes or any issues with defueling while you're trying to have some fun. So anyway, I bought another unit and it's from Full Force Diesel, reputable company. And I'm going to go ahead and install that. All right, so here you can see up close on my Harbor Freight generic regulator. It's shockingly similar to the Full Force diesel one, and I'm not trying to rip on Full Force. You know, they make some great performance injectors, but here's the part that they sent me. All right, so it's a $13 regulator from Wilkerson that's set. So this thing pops up and you can turn it. So they say it's already set to where it needs to be. It's got one brand line of hose here and another brand here. I like things to look uniform under my hood. I don't care that much, but it would be kind of nice if this was a little bit more uniform. But this is the whole boost fuller. All in all, I think the fittings, I think these are $4 or $5 a piece. I mean, maybe $1 or $2 a piece if you order them online. And the hose and this, it's probably like $25 worth of parts, like liberally, including tax and shipping. And then you've got to set the pressure. So I do get it, a little bit of man hours involved. But here's the two units. They are very, very, very similar. But the Harbor Freight one has a gauge. So what I think I'm going to do is put this gauge on here. So I ended up putting a regulator on the Full Force model. I ended up switching the lines backwards, and I'll show you guys why. All right, here's what we've got. We've got the Y or the spider. Also, shout out to that fuel bowl delete. We've got the boost line coming back through here. I have the boost gauge to the truck going pre-regulator. This is the Full Force regulator. I decided to mount it right here, and I ran it up through and around onto the map sensor. I've got the boost gauge line going up and around here into the truck. And then there's the Harbor Freight. I'll give you guys a close-up of that. There is the Harbor Freight special gauge that I have on here. So now I've got pre-boost, or I've got pre-regulator, post-regulator outside here. And so I will probably do another video where I stick a GoPro right here and watch this, and then do one view of the gauge pod in the cluster up there and one view of this, just in case you guys want to nerd out on it. Otherwise, I'd love to answer any questions about this in the comments.